It's hard to get excited about meetings, isn't it? If you listen to what Patrick Lencioni says in the meeting, in Death by Meeting, he will tell you, and he starts off with, if we don't have meetings, you don't have a job. Meetings are critical. We don't have jobs if we don't have meetings. Now, what Dilbert should really be beating up on is bad meetings, which there are a lot of, and we all attend them, and they're awful. We have to run better meetings. As I go through this, you're going to want to just absolutely run me out of the buildings. You're going to be thinking, Wade, you're just giving us more meetings. I can't promise we'll take all your meetings away. You'll still have some. But if scaling up doesn't take away some of the meetings that you already have or make them shorter, then we're not doing our job. Let me repeat that again. If scaling up doesn't take away some of the meetings you already have or shorten them significantly, we're not doing our job. Or maybe you're not doing your job and following scaling up correctly, but either way, it's not working. The idea is not to add more meetings. And if you can take some of these principles and bring them into your other meetings, I think those meetings will potentially get better as well, or not potentially, they will. So our goal isn't just to add more meetings on top of you. The reality is there are some very important meetings that we have to have, and we're going to outline them here in order to run an efficient business. Now, Wade's not the boss of me. Vern's not the boss of me. Keep that in mind. I'm going to give you the principles. The final thing I want to say before I hit the slides is that there are a lot of side meetings that happen all day long. And then there's a lot of side meetings that don't happen that should. What we're going to try to do with this system is reduce the number of side meetings, first off, because if we can get this done in the appropriate meeting, then you can go get into your whirlwind and do your job and get your rocks and wigs done, and all that will just happen. So we're trying to reduce the number of side meetings because we run really great meetings. And then also make sure during the meetings, we actually get the things out that should get out, that didn't happen, the things you forget to talk about. So this is where daily huddles become so important. I'm going to go in depth on daily huddles. The goal here as we reduce those side meetings with a daily huddle is that as you go day by day and have these daily huddles, the things that you forget to talk about, it just becomes a habit you talk about in the morning. And that's what we'll address during the daily huddle session. That's what I was trying to say. So, meeting rhythms. This is the third on the list. If you're keeping track and you're tracking time, you're probably thinking right now, Wade, you're in trouble because there's only a few hours left and you're only in habit 3. It's because the first 3 habits are pretty in-depth. The next couple will go pretty quickly. So meeting rhythms, better, faster decisions is our goal. And this is a slide that Vern's had around for a lot of years. I've always thought it's kind of a silly slide, but he likes to think about, again, the term rhythm, that you have this rhythm to your meetings. And we're doing the day, week, month, quarter, year. And so if you think in a rhythm, that's the rhythm you go in, and that's why we have the slide. So all these meetings should tie together. The days, then the weeks, then the month, then the annual, or the quarterly, then the year. And then we just over and over again. In your case, it'll be trimester, but this is the goal. So with that being said, let's talk about what each of these meetings are. So first you have the daily meeting. Daily huddle is what we call it. Huddle is such an important term. We'll get into the actual daily huddle in a second, but let me just give you an idea why we call it the huddle. If you were to watch football, and I think most of you have, and if there was a no-huddle offense the entire game, you'd say those guys are crazy. You would. I mean, no one's going to run a no-huddle offense for an entire game. It's just not practical. You have to come back to the huddle and you have to say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we got to do next play. You have to share information. It's not just a quarterback barking out orders. It's people saying, hey, this guy's getting past me over here. This is happening over there. They're running this play, so next time they'll probably run this play. Everybody's noticing things. That's a huddle. Now, there are times when they don't huddle because you go straight to, no huddle offense, but they typically huddle. And if you ever went to a professional football game and everybody ran on the field and played and no one ever huddled, they didn't stop to do timeout and they didn't talk during the quarters, you'd want your money back. That's not a very good game. But in business, we all drive to work in the morning, we rush in here, and we go straight to our desk and we start working. And you may not do that. You may do day huddles now, but a lot of America does that. And how crazy is that we don't stop to talk? And then all throughout the day, we get interrupted with those side meetings I just talked about. It's like, wait a second. Why didn't we just stop in the morning and huddle up, make sure we all understand what's going on, and then move forward? We'll get more into daily huddles and during that section, but I got to tell you, this is just a no-nonsense way of doing business, and it may not be as intuitive because a lot of people are like, well, I got to do my job. I don't have time to stop for 5 or 15 minutes. It's a bathroom break. I'm not saying you give up a bathroom break, but it's basically a restroom break. It's just give up one break a day and do it. It's so critical. Then there's the weekly meetings. Now, the meeting rhythm is first intended for the leadership team. A lot of times scaling up is adopted by companies that have about 100 employees. I'm not saying it's not right for a company of your size. There's plenty of companies your size that do this. I've got a customer in New York that's rolling up dermatology offices, and they have over 1,000 employees, and they use scaling up to do this, and it's fantastic. But typically, because there's more companies that have 100 employees than have the number you have, it's typically companies of your size that adopt scaling up. So the meeting rhythm is really intended in those companies for the leadership team. But because we have large departments, very large departments, and then we also have bases in the room, most of these things are going to apply to you because you should be doing the same thing as well. I just wanted to warn you because when you read the book and it seems like, well, this is all for the leadership team because that's the way the book's written. No, it's intended because you basically have many leadership teams throughout the bases and your departments. And it's critical that you take on some of this cadence as well. I just remember that, so that's why I said it now. Back to the slide. So every week, you want to have a 60 to 90 minute meeting with your team. And the goal here is to get the priorities and to, as debate, the goal is to talk about problems you're having in the business. And so this is just a matter of bringing up challenges from that week, things that you've noticed, just different issues. You can call this the issues list. I like to call it the OODA loop. I use that system with a lot of my clients when I'm coaching. If you've never heard of the OODA loop, came out of Vietnam dogfighting. And basically the pilots in Vietnam said, you know, we're getting caught on so much data in the plane because it was the first time in a war when the pilots had more data than they could handle in the plane. It was never happened in Korea, World War II, and then World War I. There weren't many planes, but there were a few. It never happened when they had that much data. But Vietnam was the first war where they had more data than they knew what to do with in the plane. So they came up with the OODA loop, which is, I get them mixed up sometimes, but it's observe, orientate, decide, act. And I might have got observe, orientate mixed up, but either way, you first say, okay, what's going on, orientate the situation, observe it, then decide what you're going to do, then act. And I use that with clients a lot of times when issues come up. Because many times we'll sit there and discuss in this 90-minute meeting, and before we know it, all we did is talk about an issue and rabbit trail 1,000 different directions, and we didn't make a decision. So in this 90-minute meeting, we're trying to deal with 2 or 3 big issues that came up that week. When we use OODA loop, the idea is that we go into it, we observe, we orientate, we decide, we act, and we move on. In the normal running of the business, the normal side that we all deal with in business, man, speed up the decision making. So whether you use OODA loop or another system for deciding, doesn't really matter. Just have some system. But in this 60 to 90 minute meeting, you want to set the priorities for the week, discuss any issues, debate any challenges. Now, notice I didn't talk about any strategic decisions. Nothing strategic during this weekly meeting. If someone tries to bring up some strategic, throw it on the to-do list for the quarterly meeting and save it for them. One of the biggest issues people have, especially business white-collar employees, I'll say, is that we're really focused on the strategy. We love talking about strategy. And we just, for whatever reason, we love talking about strategy. So we go in these weekly meetings, and before you know it, we're talking about a strategy. What should we do this year? How should we change this? It's just a waste of time. Deal with the execution. Deal with the operation. Get to the business of the business, and don't deal strategy. Save that for your quarterlies and your annuals. And be dogmatic about that. This 90-minute meeting has got to be just what's going on now. Now, if you get a strategy question that is turned into a issue, something you need to address, that's a different subject. But too often we just take ourselves right down that strategy path. In the scaling up world, the monthly or bi-monthly, we would typically deal with really big issues. So something that you couldn't take care of in the weekly, and you know what these are, right? You got a big issue. This thing's broken. Just too bad to talk about during the weekly. Kick it to the monthly or bi-monthly, or something really big. The other component of these bi-monthly or monthlies, again, in the scaling up world, and you guys might adjust, and that's totally fine, I'm just telling you the scaling up world, is we want to do what's called DNA transfer, which is on the screen. What that means is we want to make sure you're being trained as leaders, monthly or bi-monthly, making sure you're getting great training on not just how to be a good leader, but the systems of the company, where the company's going, just leadership training. But we also want to make sure that you're distilling that down a level. And this is one of the big mistakes I made in my last business was, and I've seen it and repeated in many other businesses, so I'm very passionate about it, is that you can always tell how fast a company can scale based on how well they train the next level and the next level and the next level. And whenever they stop doing that, that's as far as they're going to scale. But let me encourage you, it's so critical you train that next level leaders. And this is the important, not urgent stuff. And if it doesn't get scheduled, then you won't do it. That's why we're so particular about our meeting rhythms. Then you have the trimester. So there's going to be the leadership team at a minimum, and possibly the other people will meet every trimester. And this is the strategic. This is where you're doing planning and you're focusing on the business. You can have some problem resolution in this meeting, but really we want you to get as strategic as possible in this meeting. Where are we headed for the quarter, or the trimester, making your wigs, really setting things out. So we'll dig into that more. And then annually, you should have an annual meeting where you really focus just on strategy and planning for the year. So again, this is Captain Obvious. Like, this has been part of corporate America for the last 40, 50, 100 years. I don't know how long. It's been a long time. We've added a few things like the daily huddle. We've added some rules that make it better, which we're going to go through here in a few minutes. But I want to make sure I'm very clear. I get the fact that I'm not really sharing anything new. But I really want to encourage you to get energized about doing this again. Because that's one of the challenges I have whenever I speak to a crowd like this. You've been doing things similar to this for a lot of years. I mean, what I just talked about for 15 minutes was pretty redundant, with the exception of a few things you haven't heard. I just want to encourage you, please, back to that Newton's cradle. You're pulling back the ball. How much investment are you going to make? Pull this back as far as you can. Get engaged with these ideas, because it will make a difference. So with that said, let's talk about John. So John, after he sold Apple Tree, started several different things, and he started Align Space, and it's a space for CEOs to go to, specifically for business owners and CEOs/presidents to go and just think big strategy. In fact, they've got a picture of the space. They bought a bank in Delaware, and John brought a portion of his team back together that was from at Apple Tree and all left, and they built this space. And this is the day they launched. They took this picture because they were retrofitting the whole space. And like one of the parts of the space that you see in the background, there's a bank vault, and they turned that into an idea room. And this is space. This is the space they wanted to build out, so this is what it looked like. And they started the process, and the project got behind. Okay, it's a space they wanted to build that CEOs could go to, pay to go be their way, of course. But they could go and do planning and things for strategy and get out of the office. So they started the project, and within a couple of weeks, they were already off budget. They weren't on time. Things had fallen way behind. And the one thing they didn't do, and they immediately started, was the daily huddle. And this is back to that arrogance level. And I like to use the word arrogance because it's such a powerful word. It's like saying heresy in religion. It's like a powerful word. But the arrogance of these individuals who already built a very successful company was, well, we'll do this. And whether they thought it or they subconsciously or consciously, like, we don't need a daily huddle. So they didn't set one up. But they were all the way off track. They did one thing. They set up a daily huddle, and this project not only went back on track within days, it finished on time and on budget. And the only thing was the daily huddle. That's the only thing they changed. Didn't change other people, didn't change anything. So John's going to do a video next about the daily huddle. I believe it's on the Apple Tree example. But we show this example because it really reinforces, once you see the video, I mean, he has bought into daily huddles, and even he didn't do it in this situation, and it bit him in the ass.
I'm super biased around this one. I think the most important thing that comes out of our 2.5-day sessions or CEO boot camp or any time a coach is in front of a client is this idea of the daily huddle. I built my organization. We went 30x from the day we started till the day we sold the company using Rockefeller Habits. 3,000% growth. There's no way it happens without this one discipline, which is the daily huddle. Imagine every morning you got the front page from the 50 biggest newspapers, and all you did was read those headlines, how dialed in you would be to what was going on around the U.S. This is the same thing. The Daily Huddle is your opportunity. So the first thing in the Daily Huddle, it's one rotation around. What's the number one thing that you're working on today? And what you're really looking for as the leader is patterns in that data. And then if you have some KPIs that you report, there's some things that are really important to hear every single day in terms of metrics and things that you measure. So you report out on those couple KPIs every day. Again, no discussion back and forth. This isn't a 45-minute meeting where you get into long, drawn-out conversations. It's truly a statusing, updating meeting. So you've updated your number one priority. You've updated a couple KPIs. And then the last piece is the stucks section. So you go around again, and it can be more than one. It shouldn't be 15. But what are the one or two things that are constraining you, that are in your way, that are hurdles to you getting your number one priority done? And again, no in-depth discussion about those stucks. If I have a solution to your stuck, I may say, hey, catch up with me after. I think I can help you on that stuck that you reported out on. Let's spend 5 minutes on that. It's just a collective way for everyone to feel like they're growing this company together. They're part of something bigger than themselves. And they're in the know, they're in the loop, they're up to speed on what's going on in the business. It is such a powerful communication rhythm. And our rule of thumb was every minute that you spent in a huddle, in a daily huddle, should save you 10 minutes in your workday. So if your daily huddle is 8 minutes, that should be 80 minutes of savings in your workday, simply by avoiding all that back and forth kind of asynchronous communication. This is a way to sync up once a day and get everyone on the same page. Of all the things we teach, literally of all the things in scaling up in the Rockefeller habits, I truly believe the daily huddle is the single most important piece to take away.
So we're gonna come back to that in a few minutes, his video. But I wanna run through the daily huddle. I'm just looking for a slide. I missed this one slide I wanted to put in the deck. There's a great slide. I've referenced it verbally several times, but I wanted to show you visually. And I talk about how for thousands of years we've been communicating. And there's a slide we have that shows like when communication was developed as a human, when writing was developed, and then when Excel spreadsheets were developed. And if you look at the time frame, it's like it's been this much of our time, and we've been talking to each other this long. That's another important part of the daily huddle. You're bringing people together and they're talking. How many times we go back and forth via email, and you just go, you know what, I'm done. Tomorrow morning, I'll talk to the person at the daily huddle. How much would that just save you in time right there? That you just, boom, talk to them at the daily huddle. So, daily huddle, everybody goes through and says, what's up? Now, this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you about the daily huddle. I ran daily huddles. I saw Vern. The very next day in 2003 after I saw Vern, I did daily huddles. I bought into this big time, and it worked. But I will also tell you I made this mistake on what's up. I did not make sure my team was specific. And within 2 months, they hated the daily huddle. Because why? A salesperson would get on there every day and go, I'm going to make some sales calls. I got to send out some proposals. And then my engineers would get on and go, I need to go out and consult with a customer, and then I need to come back and write some reports. And then I'd get on and I'd say something generic. All generic. Wasn't specific. There's no value in that. And so whoever is holding daily huddles now and you're like, we hate them, I can almost guarantee you without even asking you, I bet you they're not specific. Or a few people in there are not specific. And you're not scolding them. I'm using that word intentionally because it's such a powerful word, scold. No one likes to hear that word, but you got to hear it. You're not scolding them and being like, no, you shouldn't do that. Be more specific. Be ready to be scolded when you're up front. If you're not specific, I'm going to let you have it. This is the number one thing on what's up. If I was doing my daily huddle this morning, I have a team. It's 2 people. We do not do daily huddles because they're part-time. But if I was to do it, I would say, I'm doing my second day with Jet Links. Today we're going to review execution and cash. I hope to wrap up by 4 o'clock. And then I've got a proposal I need to write tonight for our friends over at MHR. And then that would be it. I'm done. That's my what's up. Now it's very specific. If one of my team members, so I have a part-time part-time videographer and I have a part-time admin. My videographer, I know exactly what she would have said on that update. She'd be like, Wade, did you get any pictures? I'd say, no, but Scott's going to walk me around this afternoon. I'll get pictures for the next video, if they give me permission, of course. And then she'd be great. But she would have never known. That's why we say specific, because the idea here isn't just so people get your book report. I guess that's what you're saying. No one cares about like just generic stuff. We want specific stuff that matters, that other people might want to comment on. If you're being specific about something you do every day, today I'm going to check my voicemail and change it to today's date. That's pretty specific on what you're going to do, but no one cares. In many cases, you think about something specific you did the day before. Very specific and very, not important, it's the wrong word, but something that is meaningful is probably a better word I'm looking for. So that's what's up. Then you go, one person typically will talk about the daily metrics. If there's more than one person who needs to share, then that's fine. So maybe sales shares the daily metric, maybe operations shares the daily metric. It doesn't have to be everybody, though. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that. And then, unless you guys want to, and then do it. And then, where are you stuck? The first couple weeks, try to get everybody to come up with where they're stuck. But eventually, it's okay if not everybody shares on where they're stuck. You just want to get people in the rhythm of thinking about being stuck. And I gotta imagine you guys are stuck all the time. So come to the meeting and talk about that. On the back, you can see the Huddle cheat sheet where it talks about some of these things I just went through. For instance, stand up, no sitting. This is important to keep it short. We don't want to go over 15 minutes. We need a timekeeper, by the way. So you can transfer timekeeper responsibilities, but someone has to be a timekeeper. So they go, we're at 5 minutes, we're at 10 minutes, 15, we're done. This is another thing that drives people crazy. If you don't put that time limit in there, it's going to kill you. But I want to give you some generic best practices that are probably you're thinking about right now. So in the generic sense, not necessarily what you're going to do, you absolutely want to cascade either up or down these meetings. So everybody should be in a day huddle and no one should be in more than 2, 3 to max. So there will be days when you go do a daily huddle with your leads, then they'll go do a daily huddle with their team. So they're in 2 daily huddles. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Now, at first people are going to reject that because, oh my goodness, I'm in all these daily huddles. But once they get in the cadence, it's a great thing to have this awesome cascading communication through the organization. The other generic recommendation is you want to have it at a specific time, which Scott already said. You want to have it at an oddball time. It makes it much easier. 8:11, 9:27, 10:53. And that helps to just break it up so people remember exactly when it is. Because you start on time, you end on time. You do not wait for anybody, and you start on time no matter what. You end on time no matter what. You have to have daily huddles. So those are some best practices as well. In addition to that, the whole idea of calling in. I had a hard time embracing this one. And in fact, I never really got there because I had a remote and local team. So I always opened up a call line like what Scott talked about, so that anybody who was there would huddle around the phone and anybody who was remote would dial in. I will tell you, though, the best practice from scaling up organization is that if one person's calling in, everybody calls in. So trying to keep everybody in the same level playing field, because it's really hard if you're the one person calling in and everybody else is huddled around a phone. You don't get everything. You just don't. But if everybody's calling in, even if they're in the same office, you do get the same feeling. I'm not recommending that. I'm telling you I wasn't able to do it, but that is the best practice, is to have, if one person calls in, everybody calls in. Even if you do one huddle a day and it's just with a certain team, I'm telling you there's power in this. You have to do it. There's so much power in this. Weekly agendas. So the weekly agenda, there's some things we want in it, or bi-weekly in your case, but there is a little bit more space for you to change it up. We want to give some good news. We want you to come into this thing in the right mental capacity. Start with some positive news. And it might feel forced. It doesn't matter. Start with positive news. If you don't have any positive business news, have some positive personal news. But start with positive news. Next thing is go through your numbers. We don't want you going through the KPIs you do daily should be different than the KPIs you do weekly. You don't want to be redundant here. You want to, maybe the ones you wouldn't want to get into every day because you only have 15 minutes, you get into more in depth here during the 10 minutes. But these are not the numbers you go in through the quarterly either. They're more What do we need to talk about weekly? So be very specific about this. Think about what would I want to look at weekly? What's relevant weekly? What's impactful? That's probably a more important word, weekly. And don't put things in there that aren't going to be impactful. Once you do that, we want customer and employee feedback every single week. So if you're doing at least one start-stop that week, you can bring that to this meeting. So if you schedule start-stops throughout the year, so every week you know there's at least one, boom, you did it. Come to the meeting. This is what happened. And people in the meeting are like, wow, really? Joey said that? Yeah, I can't believe it. All right, good. Well, now you know. Then customer feedback. The bases, maybe you find a way to collect weekly feedback every week about what customers say. If you come into this meeting and you don't have new customer feedback, you don't know what's going on. It's just that simple. Customer feedback, obviously, you'll do big feedback pushes and get data once a quarter or once a year, however often corporate does it. But you need to develop some way to know what's going on a weekly basis with not all your customers. It could be just one customer, but you got to know, or else you're not in touch with your base. And then once you've done all that, then we get into the collective intelligence. This is the problem solving. And then once you're done with that, you go in the who, what, when summary. Now, the collective intelligence here is only 30 minutes because this is expecting a 60-minute meeting. I will tell you, I recommend they go with a 90-minute option. Usually this problem solving or doing the OODA loop stuff takes about 60 minutes to really get any kind of value, to get 2 or 3 done. So I would recommend doing 90-minute meetings so you have 60 minutes for this. Timekeepers as well. And then at the end, who, what, when. Record it and hold people accountable. In fact, one of your priorities and numbers back here should be reviewing last week's who, what, when. If I was running that meeting with you, if we were doing it together, I'd make sure we said, okay, what did we say last week? Who, what, when? Did it get done? If it's done right, this one 90-minute meeting should solve several other meetings during the week. Because you're just going to solve problems, get things done, communicate, and be done. It won't solve all your meetings, but it'll solve quite a few of them. Right? Oh, and then there's the one phrase close. This is a YPO thing. Taking off YPO is just, what's the one phrase you use to close this meeting? Excited about the future, on track. So Richard Kay had a company called OTG Software. He ended up selling it, but Vern based what he considers the best practice off of Richard. And what Richard would do is he'd come in on Monday and he'd have his council meeting Monday morning. So he had him 600 employees, business very similar to your size. So he would have every week on Monday morning, he'd come in, do breakfast with his council. So these were 2 or 3 select people. It wasn't the entire leadership team. In fact, 1 or 2 of them were usually not leadership people. And he would talk about what's going on in the business, not like the daily stuff. I mean, in the business, in their world, trends. Just like what's going to happen next with software? What should we be developing? Just really high level stuff. Then he'd go, that's outside of anything we even talked about. This is that council meeting. Then he'd go and he'd do his weekly leadership meeting. And that would be 1 hour to an hour and a half. And that was 8 to, say, 9 or 8 to 9:30. Then he'd go from that to his sales meeting. And the entire leadership team would go to the sales meeting. The whole sales team would come in. The leadership team would just be in listen mode only because they needed to hear what was going on. And the sales team would have their meeting from 9:30 to 10:30. Then at 10:30, in would come the marketing team. Same thing. The whole entire leadership team would wait for that. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm telling you how he did it, just for the record. And they would listen. And then once that half-hour meeting was done, at 10 o'clock, operations would come in. And this was the developers and development team. And they do an hour-long meeting about operations. The whole leadership team stayed. By 11 o'clock, everybody knew everything. They would leave. They usually would schedule flights at 1 o'clock Monday, and they'd go off and they'd do 3 or 4 days of work. And him and the leadership team would come back on Friday, check in, do it again the next week. And they ran that business only being in the office Monday morning. And they grew it to over 600 employees. I think they sold it for $1 billion or something like that, just being there on Monday mornings. Now, this may not be realistic for you, but this is an idea of rolling weekly meetings. You don't have to do this. I can tell you it can be quite powerful, though. And you're like, oh, my goodness, the leadership team, the CFO, and operations people are all going to sit through sales and marketing? That sounds like a waste of time. It wasn't for them. They got everybody on the same page in 4 hours. I did the same or similar. I didn't do the same. I did similar in my business. It was incredible how powerful it was. My CFO didn't miss a beat in the business because that person sat in those meetings and knew everything that was going on. We never had any financial questions. This is not to pick on Nate, just to say that one person. Operations, same. So HR, same as well. So anyways, so accountability. Do you have all these things filled out? We've already talked about the face. We already talked about the pace. You know about this. Only one name in the box. Don't need to go into depth about that. Here is those documents. We talked about those. Make sure you have those processes filled out. Again, this will be something you roll out when you're at the bases. And also accountability. Do you have individual accountability? I had to make a decision on what I got into and what I didn't. I just didn't have time to get into individual accountability. But the bottom part of your vision summary is your personal KPIs, your quarterly priorities. If this is rolled out correctly, every employee in the business will have a copy of this and the bottom will be filled out. Let me repeat that. Every employee. The real power of this is that everybody has a measurable and everybody has quarterly priorities. Now, I don't expect this to happen in the first quarter. I won't say anything beyond that because maybe you guys want to do it quicker than that, but I will tell you it takes time for people to get this thing, not quicker than that. You might want to go next quarter or next year or whatever. I won't set a false deadline for you, but I will tell you that this does take time. So it's okay that doesn't happen right now, but you eventually want to get to the point everybody has this. And that's the beauty of it. If you can say to a new employee, hey, we're onboarding you, here's a scaling up thing, here's a little booklet, let me walk you through it, watch this hour-long video, here's what our goals are right now, and oh, by the way, we expect you, once you're fully trained, and there's an onboarding process, we get that, but at some point, the bottom part you will have filled out as well. For right now, just live this top part. Help us with the top part as a new employee, but eventually we want to bring you into the fold on the bottom part as well. This is when you know you're fully in at JetLinks because you have this filled out as well. This is your full page. And then every trimester, this is what they've got at their desk, hung on the wall, very visible. What the company's doing, what they're doing. That's that relentless repeatability. All right, employee feedback. Already talked about this. Start, stop, keeps, all that good stuff. Just want to remind you, what do you think we should start doing? Another thing that you really want to get into is not just this informal start, stop, keep, but a formal survey. You heard John talk about NPS scores with his staff, and I love what John did. Because the NPS score is kind of tough, right? NPS score is more intended for clients than for the staff. But too many of us have taken this whole NPS score and done it to everything. How likely would you be to recommend us to a friend or a colleague? Well, I just saw recently someone posted on LinkedIn, they got asked this question about net backup, and they answered it 0, because they would never recommend net backup to a friend or family member because nobody in their friends or families use net backup or storage devices. They're not in IT. It's a dumb question, right? So it doesn't always work. So I reject the idea that net promoter should be used everywhere. So employee net promoter score. John's video is coming up here in a second. How do you do that? Let me first talk about what I did at Comfort Research. I gotta go. See, I'm trying not to look at my slides here. I'm trying to be a good presenter and be out in front of you. You know what? We did. You guys threw me off. John did do his video. So, in his video, he talked about the fact they would say, how happy. This is the one about the money ball. They said, happy employees equal happy customers. So we did hear this. He just was mixing the money ball video. So let me reset. Okay. NPS scores. The best way to do this with your employees, and it was what I love what John did, is he said, I'm not going to ask you how likely you are to recommend Apple Tree to a friend or colleague. They said, how happy are you at Apple Tree? 1 through a 10. And that's what they measured. Relentlessly. Every single quarter. How happy, maybe it was every month. How happy are you at Apple Tree? And they knew if that score was high, then they would have high customer service and they would have retain their clients. And that's all that he asked. I'm not suggesting that's what you should ask, but you should do some type of net promoter score, some type of net promoter question. And then there's the Gallup 12. They call them the Q12. If you don't have it, you just Google it. If HR doesn't want to Google it, send me an email. I'll send it to you. The Q12 is the gold standard for surveying your employees. They ask things like, do you have a best friend at work? Have you been recognized in the last quarter for your work. You guys you've been asked these questions. Trust me, it's been around for a while. It's the gold standard. We recommend it as scaling up. You're supposed to pay Gallup to use it. That's between you and Gallup, whether you do or don't, but it's out there. It's been out there for a lot of years, and Gallup put a ton of research around it, and it's stood the test of time. That's another great one. So ask simple questions. Do the Q12. Figure out how are you going to go through and survey your employees. If I had to imagine, you guys already do it. So I'm probably just giving you Captain Obvious here, but I'm promoting it because I'm a big believer. All right, let me talk about comfort research, because it's not just going out and talking to your employees about how they feel. It's also recognizing your employees. And we could do a whole day session on recognizing employees. In fact, there's a really great company, a YPO company called Bodville, who they are like the world-class organization on recognizing employees, where they have all kinds of these very, very smart, not just gifts, but reward systems for making sure you're consistently recognizing employees for their effort and for their accomplishments. And there's so many ways of doing this. I want to talk just for a second, though, about what we did at Comfort Research. It's got a great story to it. Then John will do a video on his idea flash, which is recognizing employees for feedback that they gave. Because not all feedback is just how happy we are at JetLinks. There's feedback that tells you, like, what you could do better. The whole idea box, right? The comment or the comment box. What's it called back in the olden days? Suggestion box, right? The one's got a lock on it. Why would you lock the suggestion box? I never understood that. Like, you're afraid people will put too many suggestions in, or they're going to read the suggestions and know what people are saying about the company. But that's a whole other story. But getting away from suggestion box, and talking about how do you get feedback and then how do you reward it. And before I show you the next slides, a friend of mine, now I'm name dropping like Vern does. But anyways, Matt Bullock at Tentcraft, when you do the suggestion box there, you fill it out and you hang it on the wall. Your suggestion goes on the wall so everybody can see. There's no secrecy. If you think management's screwing up and you want to put it on the wall, kaboom, it goes up there. I used to have this thing once a year we called the free and open room. It was fun but scary at the same time. We would pull all the employees. Actually, it was optional. So you didn't have to attend this meeting. It was during all hands. We'd have an all hands, all day meeting. And then at night, if you wanted alcohol, the only way the company would pay for it is if you came to the free and open room. And at the free and open room, we'd load you up with beers. And then after an hour, you could ask any question you wanted. You couldn't make any comment, and you couldn't grandstand and be like, here's my opinion of the company. But if you had a question you wanted to ask about the company, why do we do this? Why do we do that? With the exception of compensation, we'd answer any question you asked. How much ownership does this person have? This and that, all these things. Anything you wanted. So anyways, holy smokes, free and open room became a tradition. And man, I got smoked a couple of years. Wow, it was not fun. But I'll tell you, it was like a safety valve to the company because we let pressure off every year. People had things they wanted to know about, they wanted to ask, and they had a forum to do it. These are just ideas. I'm not saying you do them, I'm just giving you ideas. So let's talk about comfort research. So we already talked about them earlier with their core values. But they have this thing they call a FAB award. You can read right here what it is. These submissions are done publicly. Everybody gets to see them. If you do any submission, you get $25 in comfy bucks. And that's just basically go buy comfort research stuff. Then you get the next award and the next award. The $10,000 award has been given to this Patrick guy. Oh, no, was it Patrick or another guy? Let's just say it was Patrick for a minute. It's been given to Patrick 3 times. The best part about this story is Patrick's an ex-con, and he was a bank robber. He did 10 years for bank robbery. When he got out, no one would give him a job. So these are the 2 owners of Comfort Research, and they said, you know what? We got a production job for you. We believe in rehabilitating people. It's a big thing they do. So they rehabilitated him, or they didn't do it, but they put him on the line. But as an ex-con, as a bank robber, this guy is really crafty. He got away. He robbed, I think, 13 banks before he got caught. Never carried a weapon once. He'd always put his hand in his pocket, and he'd be like, give me whatever's behind the thing, and then he'd run out, and he'd get $2,500 or $25,000, and he'd run out. Anyways, so he did this, but he's very crafty. So not only did they got a great employee who's really happy to be there, this guy's won the award 3 times, because he always finds something that is really intuitive that could be changed about the business. So this is the FAB Award. This is what they do. And just to give you an idea, I also threw this in. This is the pictures of them at different meetings. And this is manufacturing people. These are not white collar jobs. This is manufacturing, and they have a great culture. Everybody loves being there. They love the company. And I've walked the floors. I'm not just talking like, oh, I see these pictures. I mean, I've been in their facilities. Very, very blue collar, very, very manufacturing jobs, and people love being there. And then here's their net promoter score right here. Now, they do say recommend a friend or colleague, and then down here they put their start, stop, keep. So that's what they do. So that's one way of rewarding. Let's talk about Idea Flash, or let John talk about Idea Flash, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
We were a quarterly themes, Rockefeller habits, like devoted at Appletree. And we always tried to use a quarterly theme that we could get people involved in and would really move the needle inside the business. And so one of our quarters, we had frontline people that were sitting there taking call after call. They'd average 300 to 400 interactions in an 8-hour shift, and they really knew our customers probably better than maybe even the customer knew what was going on. And so many times they had great ideas about, maybe a way a customer could iterate, or a new service, or something they should start or stop doing. But it was so busy taking these calls, they really didn't have a vehicle to share those ideas. So we use Salesforce.com. We actually had a Salesforce login for every single person in the company. And Salesforce was our back office platform in addition to being our CRM. And we used it to build apps and stuff as well. So we decided we're going to have a quarterly theme. We called it Idea Flash. And it was all based on this little app that we were going to build in Salesforce that would stay on the desktop. And it would give the expert, the frontline employee, the opportunity in about 10 seconds or so to capture an idea. So if they thought of a better way to maybe handle a client, or there was some technology thing going on, or even, we didn't have enough paper towels in the break room, anything like that, they had an opportunity to just pop up Idea Flash, type it in real quick, and then we used workflow routing. If it was a customer issue, it would go to the customer service person there. If it was an operations issue, it would go to the ops manager. And Idea Flash would route these things around. So we launch it with a quarterly theme. And the goal was, company-wide, can we get 10,000 ideas in this quarter? So we do the launch. We had a client on the West Coast. They had about 15 windshield replacement offices. So if you get a rock that hits your windshield and it starts to crack, or you get break a window in your car, these guys would come out and do emergency service. It was normally covered by insurance. So lots of emergency type jobs. One of our experts noticed that she was saying no to a lot of people for Sunday, and she put an Idea Flash in, and she said, hey, I think Caliber Collision should do Sunday service on windshields. So our customer service rep gets it Monday morning, and she calls her counterpart at Caliber and said, hey, we've noticed we're turning down a lot of Sunday work. And he said, yeah, we haven't done that for 2 years. We just didn't think we were busy enough. So she said, well, let's do a test the next 4 Sundays. So they get some drivers to go out on the road. They do a pilot. Turns out that little, idea Flash, they were leaving $2 million, not in revenue. They were leaving $2 million in profit on the table by arbitrarily not doing Sunday emergency service. Now, you want to be really sticky with a customer, proactively find them $2 million in new income in their business they didn't know existed. You're pretty sure you're going to have that client for a really, really long time. So oftentimes, we're the last to know. The senior leaders are the last to know. And if we can unlock the power of the front line and the middle management and the supervisors and all those, really where the rubber meets the road with customers, if we could just let them quickly share ideas with us, often we can find incredible ways to serve customers or solve problems that we would have never, ever found out about with 1,000 focus groups, and really unlock the power of that front line to look for those ideas.
So I gave you quite a few ideas there because I get passionate about this. I love telling stories. I love especially telling the stories about our free and open room. But there I go again. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is there's just so many ways to collect employee feedback, collect your colleagues' feedback, collect your team members' feedback, whatever the appropriate way of saying it is. Go out there and do it. So about customer feedback, there are about 1,000 different ways you can do customer feedback. These are just some principles we've learned. Remember, Vern's not the boss of me. Wade's not the boss of me. These are just some ideas. I want to really preface that before I go into here. You've seen this. We've already talked about it. So how are you doing? These are the questions you ask when you're doing customer feedback. You want to know how they're doing. Make it about them. I hate calls whenever I get them about people trying to tell me how they're doing and then sell me something. Now, I want find out how they're doing. First off, it's the right thing to do. Second, you never know when you're finding a black swan, some piece of data, you go, oh my goodness, they just said that. I need to sell them this. So that's the most important thing. What's going on in your industry, your neighborhood, whatever, find out what's going on, because the reality is that you might want to go acquire more clients like them, especially these are good ones. Knowing what's going on in their industry makes that way more possible. And you're not going to find this from anybody else. And if you do it carefully and you're not giving away trade secrets, imagine the power of going from there to there. By saying, you talk to this customer, and then all of a sudden you're going to the very similar customer down the street or client or prospect saying, hey, is this a problem? Oh, yeah, that is. Here's how we could help you potentially. This is just sales 101, I know, but we forget to do it. What are you hearing about the competitors, right? That's okay to gather, our competitors. And then how are we doing? Ask them how you're doing. And that's the last thing, is about you. And these are things, Vern really stresses this. This is the official Scaling Up Vern slide deck. I think they're great. Really, the bottom line is any conversation with your client is a good conversation. I've never had a conversation with a client that's a bad one, even when they're angry. There's always a way to gather data. There's always a way to make it better. There's always a way to sell them more. Those are things you should be running to, talking to your clients. We talked about Net Promoter already. I think I downplayed it inside your business, but I will tell you Net Promoter, I downplayed it inside your employee base, but Net Promoter outside for your customers is a must-use solution. In fact, I believe in it so much, you're going to get a chance to Net Promote me in about 2 hours. I know, isn't that funny? So if you weren't happy, you get to tell me, and you get to rate it. So remember, or maybe not remember, you've never seen this before, but the way it works is the only thing I want, seating the crowd here a little bit, is a 9 or 10. That means you're a promoter. If you give me an 8 or a 7, that means that, you're just neutral or passive. That doesn't help me. So, and it's okay if I'm only an 8 or a 7. I deserve it. Please do that. I don't want to ruin this survey too badly. I've already done it a little bit, but I want to make the point. I want you to learn. It's more important. But if you do an 8 or 7, you're like, I'll give this guy an 8. He's a good guy. But he could have done a little bit better. And he said, too many times. And you give me an 8. Fred did a lot of research on this. This ultimate question, man, I'll tell you, this is adopted by many, many, many Fortune 500 companies. It is the Bible when it comes to surveying people. And they will say an 8 is not a promoter. If they won't give you a 9, they're not promoting you. And I found that to be true. It's hard to swallow. It's really hard to swallow, but I've had plenty of 8s doing this. And I'll tell you what, those people never refer me. But the 9s and 10s always do. So, old joking aside, please obviously answer this legitimately in the future. But I want to make that point because it's so applicable right now. And then if you get a 6 or below, that is not a promoter. If they gave you a 6, there's a reason why. And you might a 6 is not bad. Wait, no, a 6 sucks. That means you did something wrong. So Net Promoter is an amazing way. The best part about Net Promoter is there's so much research, there's so much add-on data, so much add-on stuff you can do with Net Promoter. So if you do this, it's an amazing tool. You may already have something else you're using. Maybe you do Net Promoter, but this is what we recommend for getting that feedback. So this is a pizza place. Oh boy, just forgot where it's at. Maybe China? I don't remember, but either way, and they have a great simple question right here, and it says, by answering these simple questions, you possibly make our pizza better, and I think they actually give you something. But they basically say, how does your food taste? 1 to 10. How convenient was your order from us? Would you recommend us to a friend? If you scored 8 or below, look at that right there. Can we call you to find out why? And right there, they're saying it, man. If we're an 8 or below, we want to know why. As I said, an 8 or below is not a promoter, right? So this is what they put out there. I'm promoting this because I really want to point out that they just made these up. Like, where's my toothbrush? Give me more, right? They made this fun. Don't make this like where your client doesn't want to do the survey. Make it fun. Make it something they want to do. Right down here, look at this. How convenient is to order from us? Kill me now. Probably not the best thing to put there, but either way, easy as. I mean, they're showing the scale. This is so important. Don't make this something people don't want to fill out. And then finally, notice it's only 4 questions. And the 4th one is just, can we call you? So think about that when you're doing your surveys and you're putting things together. And then Coastal Contacts, there was a contact company up in, or like Coastal.com was a contact company up in Canada. They sold recently, but they sold online contacts. And they found out by surveying their clients that people wanted overnight delivery. The Amazon Prime, the Amazonification of our society, right? You know, this is the Amazon effect. That's the word I was looking for. The Amazon effect affected them. And how they found this out was they polled their clients and they said, who are the most happy clients? Net promoted them, right? This is how they figured it out. And they found that their net promoter score went down the further you got away from their shipping sites. Like, that's weird. Like, okay, every shipping location we have across Canada, the net promoter score is higher the closer you are to our shipping facilities. So they said, let's dig in more. So they dug in more and they found out that everybody, as soon as you got to the point it was no longer one day UPS or one day FedEx or one day, the regular mail wouldn't get you in one day. Once you got past that range, the net promoter score dropped off. And it dropped off even more when you got to the 3-day and 4-day. And their net promoter score directly correlated to how quickly did they get their contacts. So think about this for a second. Customers would have never told them this. Customers didn't even know they were unsatisfied or satisfied based on the shipping. But by collecting the data, they realized that this is what was happening. They would have never known it. Then what they did is they experimented, A/B tests. Said, okay, let's start overnighting contacts to just a few select people, and then let's do A/B testing and net promoter score. They did that, and no matter where they overnighted the contacts, they got a higher net promoter score across the board. So I said, let's just do it to everybody. And they overnighted contacts to everybody, and even if they didn't pay for it, they just did it as part of their system, and their sales doubled because of it within 1 year. Because they found one thing. Now, of course, if I would have suggested that, or you would have suggested that as an employee, like, no way can we spend the money overnighting all these contacts. It's way too expensive. But if I said you could do that and double revenue, like, okay, done deal. And they discovered that by running Net Promoter. So that's why we tell that story. And you just don't know what you're going to find from the data, but the data is so important.